As we begin this session, I want to remind you that these skills are meant to help us grow as disciples of Christ. Look at the graphic in your workbook. It shows how each skill enables us to both receive the love of God and give the love of God. In our last session, we learned the community temperature reading, or CTR for short. With that skill, I receive the love of God by using my God-given voice to express, for example, my preferences and hopes and wishes. I'm also giving the love of God by checking out puzzles and now taking responsibility for my complaints. In this session, you'll be taught two skills: stop mind reading and clarify expectations. They both revolve around eliminating more assumptions that create confusion and pain in relationships. They're simple skills and profoundly practical. These two skills are based on the 9th commandment from Exodus 20:19. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. When you and I make assumptions about others without checking them out, it's easy to start telling ourselves stories about them in our heads that aren't true. We are bearing false witness in our own thoughts against our neighbor, and this is very damaging to relationships. The first skill, called stop mind reading, is to clarify what another person is thinking rather than assuming you know. It's a skill that can be used anywhere, anytime, that I become aware that I'm making assumptions that I've not checked out.
Some Christians get offended at the title of this skill, stop mind reading, because God condemns it in the Old Testament. And that is why we call it that. We are the last people who should be involved in such a thing. For example, on my days off from church, I used to think, I'm so tired and I would love to take a nap. But in my mind, I thought to myself, if I take a nap, Jerry's going to be upset. And I just assumed it was important to her that I take advantage of every spare minute to get things done. And when I finally learned the skill, I asked her, I said, Jerry, may I have permission to read your mind?
You may.
I think that you think that if I take a nap on my day off, that I'm a slouch or I'm lazy, and you'll think less of me. Is that true?
No, not at all.
So you can see I lost years of naps.
I have an example where a young woman came to me about how she recently used this skill. She told me she assumed her friend would get mad at her for wanting to reschedule a dinner date. But this time she decided to stop mind reading and give her friend a call. So she called her and said, hey, I'd like to check out an assumption with you. I'd like to reschedule our dinner date, but I think you'll be mad at me if I do. Is that correct? Her friend said to her, no, I'm actually relieved. I've had a stressful week, and it'd be better for me too if we reschedule. So you can see how we begin to tell ourselves stories that just aren't true when we make assumptions.
The principle is simple. Never assume you know what a person is thinking or feeling. Here's how the skill works. Reflect on something you assume someone thinks or feels, but has not actually told you. And then you ask, may I have permission to read your mind? When permission is granted, you say, I think, you think. Is that correct? Or you can ask, can I check out an assumption I have? I am wondering, whatever it might be, and you say, is that correct? Here's an example of what we mean. Let me try this out now live with Jerry. Jerry, may I have permission to read your mind?
You may.
I think that you think that I'm responsible to figure out all the money involved in getting another car, and finding the car, of course. Is that correct?
No, not at all.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. May I have permission to read your mind?
Sure.
I think that you think that I am responsible for all the logistics of our summer vacation. So I'm supposed to book the flights and the rental car and the lodging. So is that correct?
Yes.
Ah, Oh, okay. Well, you know what? At least it's good to know that.
Absolutely. Now, turn in your workbooks and follow the instructions for this skill.